All right, and we're live.
Week 9, right?
We are on week 9, y'all. So if you want to follow along, week 9. Today we're just going to cover the cardiac cycle and kind of Wigger's diagram. I think you guys did a little bit already. I know we kind of started. We went over what hemodynamics last week. It was, it was a nice little ride. You guys seen what normal was, how we measure, inside the heart, what we measure, pressure, saturations, things like that, and how it kind of plays into the whole picture of things, right? We collect all this data. Our seniors right now are learning how to use calculations to, interpret that data and produce like a quantitative kind of outcome, right? So right now we're kind of focused on the qualitative stuff. We're focused on kind of, seeing what's happening, explaining it, and later on you'll turn those into numbers, right? But to be able to qualitatively interpret things and look at things, you guys have to, have maybe some kind of roadmap or whatever, right? So that's what we're going to kind of establish is like, hey, we need like a roadmap we can, put like, oh, this is all normals right here, right? And then kind of compare that and say, oh, this is out of range, this is out of whack, kind of things. And that's what we're going to kind of cover today. Let's watch. All right.
We're supposed to join?
You don't have to.
Okay.
You're joining right now in IRL, in real life. Yeah. So it's cool. All right. We do have the Prezi here. It's a pretty quick Prezi. Of course, cardiovascular anatomy and physiology. Boom, boom, boom. We're in the physiology realm. Like I said last week, we started hemodynamics. We kind of went over at the very end. You've seen the Wigger's diagram. It was like to be continued, right? And now it's continued. Our roadmap of what's happening on right there, explaining all the movements that are going on, what's happening during each cycle, things like that, right? So just like any map, we break it down into sections, and just so we can interpret things. Let's see. So in addition from our conduction system causing that muscle to move, creating our cardiac cycle here, right? So we look at the cardiac cycle. These are the things that are happening, right? It's just blood moving through the heart and how it's moving through. We know that in order for blood to move forward, the pressure from one chamber has to exceed the pressure in the other, right, to move forward. And to prevent backflow, when this pressure is higher there, they have the valves that close and prevent that backflow from going on, right? So this is pretty much just the cycle that's happening. I'll let you take a moment to keep it all in right there. All right, pause for effect. There it is. And that's our roadmap, right? It's like kind of taking everything from that last slide and putting it into here. So these are all the events that are happening. These are the events that we're mainly tracking. This is mainly like the data that we're collecting, right? So it's like, hey, we're looking at this while we're monitoring cases. So this is kind of like what you'll look at when you're monitoring. So like you're in the cath lab and you see you have this screen right here. Looks a lot like that Wigger's diagram a little bit, right? You're getting pressure waveforms, you're putting them together, seeing how they match up, seeing if there's any abnormalities, right? Just kind of getting all the pieces of the puzzle, turning them right the other sideways so you can see what they look like, and then start piecing the puzzles together. Ooh, that's good. Nice. As you see right here, we have what we're seeing, live that's going on, EKG, pressures, even spirometry, a couple other things, blood pressure, all those things that we're monitoring, you guys will kind of get exposed to when you guys start hooking up patients in your 1471. Over here is where we document everything that's kind of happening, right? The computer. Cool things with this is like they have applications to help us with our calculations and everything, right? So it's like, hey, give me a cardiac output. You're like, okay, let me find the cardiac output tab, boom, and it'll have like all these boxes, like you need to collect this, this, and this. You need to collect like hemoglobin, you need to collect these saturations. Once you plug those in, boom, we're going to get that cardiac output, right? So things like that, yeah. So it's nice. We live in the future. Yeah, exactly. We don't even have to, like.
Think about it.
No, we just plug it in, right? We collect the data and we put it in the right place. That's it. And let the computer do all the job, right? Take out the human error.
Yeah,
I like that.
For sure.
For sure. All right. So this is kind of what it looks like up close. This is your monitoring system. This is a monitoring system. I don't like it. I prefer the MacLab. But as you can see, just some of the things that they collect, right? EKGs, side-by-side monitoring, right? Looks very much like your Wigger's diagram. What's that?
What's the difference? Why don't you like that one?
I don't know. MacLab's like really easy. So it's like you can set up your own macros and plan it. Like you can say like, what is it? Like collect LV pressure, and then next change the scale, change this out to look at the LV EDP closer, right? So you can just like press a button, boom, boom, and then like it'll just do it for you automatically. It'll take the LV pressure, and then it'll go into the LV EDP, boom, and it'll output. Yes.
I have a stupid question.
No,
When you're
no questions.
monitoring the screen,
Yes.
Do you just get muscle memory for scanning the barcodes of everything while you're looking at it?
Well, you use your other senses too, right? So, which is kind of cool. You always have it out of your peripheral, right? You always kind of keep an eye on the monitor. Other people are keeping an eye on the monitor. There's people out in the case keeping an eye on the monitor. They can see like these tracings right here. But like, you can hear beeping a lot of times too. Like when we monitor or like when we hook patients up in the lab, sometimes we put pads on them or we monitor their EKGs from an external, like this thing right here. Like this thing right here, right? We'll hook them up to those leads right there, and we'll get, or the pads, and we'll get that EKG, but you'll hear the rhythm. You'll hear like beep, beep, beep. It'll be like rhythmic. So you'll watch out, then you'll hear like beep, 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 and then you'll look at that and look at the monitor and like correlate those two. And like, oh, you're running, or, things like that. You have a run of like PVCs, run things like that. So that's pretty cool that way. It's a juggle. Like the better you are at like computers, I always say like hand-eye coordination. Gamers, when it comes to this stuff right here, always like rocks this stuff, right? Because they're like click, click, boom, boom, boom. They can do like a bunch of things at once, right? If you're not computer savvy or you haven't, done a lot of clicking or, it takes a little bit of time to get used to and muscle memory to do it. So it's interesting. So every place kind of puts a different emphasis on monitoring. So it just kind of depends on your location too. Sometimes you're like, we can let anybody monitor and just press a couple buttons here and, depends, but
It's good. You need game
probably shouldn't. Yeah, I always say that. I don't know, because you always see those, like especially like when it comes down to like doing pullbacks, measuring LVEDP and all this other stuff that requires like all these clickings like in succession. They're just like, got it. And like, some techs will be like, hold on, I gotta spread up. I'll retake it. It gets a little rough. So there's certain transitions that you'll focus on during the case that, it'll kind of stick out. But yeah. So that's it right there. That's our Wiggers, right? Not too bad. We memorize it. We want to look at it. We want to understand what's going on here, right? What's happening in each of the chambers. Let's see. So this is a pretty good. Let's look at some other things too. Intro to Wiggers. No, I think that's the Prezi link. Don't need that. Don't need that. I do need this. Allow. I love this one right here because this tells you what's happening in the heart, why these lines are going on.
Now that doesn't look so scary.
Now it doesn't look so scary?
First when I saw it, I was like, I have no idea, but now it's
like, yeah,
I'm gonna read it.
kind of reminds me of like that movie, The Monster Squad. Remember that old 80s movie, Monster Squad? Yeah, where Frankenstein looks real scary and the little girl comes. I watched it yesterday, so
That's
that's
what
why.
the real scream too, when she saw the guy playing Dracula with his fangs in. That's
Yeah.
The first time she'd seen it.
Yeah, that seemed pretty authentic.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I had to turn down the TV, it got loud. Like,
Calm her down after.
I'm sure. Yeah, that was legit. Yeah, and to warn her that those teeth were coming out,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that he was going to call her a B word, right?
She
That was
had
bad.
no idea.
She had no idea. She was like,
Only
Yeah.
in movies is you can get away with calling a little girl a bitch.
I know. I was like, wow, this is totally 80s right now. This is like kids like not buckled in the backseat 80s.
This was a seatbelt.
Yeah.
In the back of the truck.
In the back of the truck 80s. Yeah. I was like, this makes sense. But anyways, moving forward, right? It's scary at first, but now you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, these are the things that are happening in the heart. It's just telling its story. They all fit together, right? Can't have one without the other. So where do we start, right? Let's look at the different phases, right? Let's go basic. We have systole and diastole, right? So that's pretty, that's pretty big. Oh, I can't zoom in. Let's zoom here. All right. So systole and diastole, right? So those two right there break down into even more stages, right? There's stages within stages. It's like stageception, something like that. But look at right here. Look at the things happening in systole and diastole. And we'll start. Well, systole and diastole. This is more during the diastolic phase right here. Let's see, during atrial systole. Let's see, let's start. Oh, boom. Let's see, where's a good starting point? Reduce ejection. Okay. We will start right here in diastole. All right. This is like pretty much the basic right here. This is where it all kind of starts. Let's just put it right here. Okay. Rapid ventricular filling. All right. So the ventricles are just squeezed, right? They're starting to relax, right? All of a sudden, your right atrial pressure over. Let's see, we're over here, right? Right atrial pressure exceeds your left ventricular pressure or ventricular pressure, right? And opens up these valves, right? Boom. Let's go. And you see what's happening during rapid filling. It's filling rapidly. The ventricles are filling rapidly, right? So it's like, hey, remember during systole, all this blood started accumulating because it was still coming back, right? So it's ready just to dump, right? It is just ready to go. So then, boop, it dumps, right? So we have the rapid ventricular filling. And then once the blood starts, diminishing, right, after it's like, bloop, right, it has a stage of, they call it diastasis, meaning like, what does diastasis mean? I don't know, to you. Like,
Kind of resting.
Is that where nothing
resting.
happens?
What is the word? Yeah, what is the word that kind of sticks out in that word?
Stasis.
Stasis. Yeah, diastasis, diastolic stasis. Dang, I just came up with that. That's cool.
Nice.
Diastolic stasis. Hashtag diastolic stasis. Cool. So yeah, diastasis, right? So there's not much moving. As you can see, there's not much going. Boom, boom. We go, it's still filling a little bit, right? Not much movement's going on. Boom. Some call it systole, I still call it in diastole right here, but atrial systole then it happens, right? So after rapid ventricular filling, atrial systole happens, right? So there's still about 15, I don't know, there's still a certain amount of blood right there. So the atria contract and push out that 15% in there. It's like, then you go, right? Go again. Get in there, blood. Wow. All right. So during that time, we can see, the atrias are emptying out, right? And then we start seeing that the ventricles, hey, they're going to start squeezing. They're going to start increasing pressure, right? So they're going to shut this valve right there and push this valve over here going, right? Same with here. It's dubbing over here and pushes out there. So as it's starting to build pressure, all the valves are closed at this point right here. So like you'll hear the term isovolumetric contraction, meaning that the ventricles are starting to contract, but the blood is isovolumetric, meaning that's not moving volume, right? It's not moving forward. So everything's like at a standstill, right? The pressures.
That 1 millisecond that the blood is standing still, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see. It is, they say, what, 0.1, about a 0.1 period, right? 0.1 of a second. Where that blood is, oh, I just felt that. Oh, right there in my heart. There it is. Right? There it is, it's the isovolumetric contraction. Right, no. But yeah, it's starting where the ventricles are starting to squeeze, right? And the pressure's starting to rise. It closes this valve. It hasn't opened this valve yet. So all the blood, so it empties. Over here, the pressure's building up over here, closes that valve, is trying to open this valve, but it's not having enough pressure, so everything's at a standstill, right? All the blood is isovolumetric, or what is it, isovolumetric, or isovolumetric, meaning that it's, what is it, the volume is not moving, it's still isolated, sure, all right. We'll work on that. We'll put a pin in that. But isovolumetric contraction. So the ventricles are contracting, but there's no blood moving forward, and all the valves are closed. Right? Next up, we have our rapid ejection. Right? So the ventricles have, their pressure has exceeded the requirements to open up these valves. Right? So the pressure is being exerted over here. The ventricles have overcome those pressures right there and emptied out. Emptying and emptying. Right? emptying, 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 emptying. So let's take a closer look at it. So we had our ISO volumetric period right there, right? We're gonna see let's see. Oop. ISO volumetric period. Ventricles are building up, right? But right during, let's talk about like right here. Let's talk about the volume like right here. All right, in the ventricle, like at this point right here, before it ejects, before the blood starts moving forward, what would we call this right here?
The ejection fraction?
No. So let's see, what? Preload. Nice.
That's
I didn't
what,
even
okay,
have
that was, I didn't really understand the question.
I got you. I asked
I
terrible
was like-
questions. She
I was
got it.
like,
Yeah.
ejection.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like,
You
no, she
understood.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
What was that called? Left ventricle? That's what that was my first.
So this is the bullet that's being loaded, right? Remember we talked about the preload bullet, right? Preload bullet being loaded. So this is everything right here. Boom. It's all loaded and ready to go. So preload, right? So when we talk about freeload, preload.
Preload.
Wow, it's not the first of the month yet.
Not the first
Oh,
one.
wow. Yikes. Erase that.
Wait.
Preload.
We have those days.
What's that?
We have those days.
Those days. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the preload, and then what it has to do, it has to overcome the afterload, right? It has to overcome the pressure that's being over here, right? Squeeze, and overcome the afterload, right? Which we also call, what is it, peripheral vascular resistance, right? What else do we call it? Anything else?
Arterial, peripheral vascular resistance, arterial, something. I can't remember.
That's VR, right? What is that? What does that stand for?
Systemic vascular, no, systolic vascular.
Systemic, which is just like your peripherals, right? Systemic vascular resistance, boom. Yeah.
And is that also A wave?
What's that?
Is that also A wave equals preload?
Well, let's look. Let's look back over here. Right. So your A wave, boom, is kicking all the volume in there, right? So it's like right after that A wave,
It's right
right?
after.
Yeah. So then we have like this period right here. They call it the end diastolic period right here. End diastolic.
So it's not true if I say A wave equals preload, that's not accurate, but it's right after it.
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
For sure.
Because preload is like a combination of the diastolic filling, rapid filling, and what is it? The atrial kick.
Right.
So-
The,
What's that?
the A wave is atrial.
Right here. Yep. A wave is atrial. Yep.
So
the A
like
wave.
the diagram that you're having to identify, it kind of looks at the same spot. It looks like it's the same spot, and I was trying to differentiate that, trying to tell if the A wave equals preload, which didn't seem quite right, so you're
Gotcha.
clear.
So the more clear is the end diastolic pressure, right? End diastolic pressure, end diastolic volume, pretty much, which is the same thing a little bit. One's pressure, one's volume, right? We also talked about pressure equaling volume, right? Remember that? Remember that vaguely? So these all kind of tie in. So end diastolic right here, boom, boom. That's good. All right. So there's a lot of things that we can kind of correlate with that. Good. Let's see. So then we have the contraction kicking out, kicking out, kicking out, kicking out, and then the blood's ejected, right? So it's like, okay, time to, now the pressure is coming back forward this way and that way. It's pushing back on these, right? So after the reduced ejection, it's starting to reduce, and then the pressure starts to overcome and closes both of these valves on the back right there. Boom, closes them shut, right? Good. We good with that? So we get that close, and then we get this dicrotic notch because like the blood is like slammed, right? It's like boom, and then it kind of bounces back a little bit, right? It's like if you like poured water on something and you get that little splashback kind of thing, right?
So the slamming of the valves are the ones that makes the diacritic notch?
Yep.
Oh, okay, that's what I was gonna ask you too, what was that? So it's indication.
That's the indication that the aortic valve is shut or
Okay.
pulmonary valve, or yeah, during that.
So the diacritic notch doesn't mean if it's absent, then it's not slamming.
Well, or there might be something wrong with it, or you might just recheck your pressure, right? Like
Sure.
how you're recording it.
Okay.
So there'd be other signs too. I won't go over. All right. So we have that. Boom. And during this phase right here, This is isovolumetric relaxation time, isovolumetric relaxation. So during this time, it's relaxing. The ventricles are starting their diastole, right? But it's like isovolumetric, just like the other phase, right? Where the blood isn't moving forward or backward or anything.
All the valves are closed on this part too.
What's that?
All the valves are closed on this part as well.
Yes, all the valves are closed. So we have like 2 periods where the isovolumetric relaxation, isovolumetric contraction, right? Where blood's not moving forward or anything like that. Cool. Good with that? Yeah. All right. Let's see. So we have the isovolumetric relaxation. Boom, boom. And as you see during this time, blood is still accumulating right here. The pressure is still rising, right? If we see the pressure rising, boom. Atrial valves opened up, right? Dump in, boom. Right after the V wave, right? So this V wave is like when everything's, the pressure's building, and then boom, it overcomes the valve, opens it up, right, and then dumps. So this V wave can be attributed to like right before the opening of the valves, right? As soon as it opens, it decreases, right? Decreases, and then we start again. Crazy. That's the cardiac cycle, all right? That was just your first trip around. We got more trips to go, right? Yeah, this happens like 60 beats a minute. For some people, I don't know, check your pulse right now and find out how many times this is happening a minute. Right, yeah. Let's go. I'm almost to the bottom. I get better there. Let's see. All right. So we kind of see what happened in different parts of these phases right here. We have like our diastolic phases, and then we have our systolic phases, right? So this diagram, I think, is a little off because they're saying that atrial systole should be like in the systolic period, but it's really still during diastole, right? Yep. Systole is only happening right there, right? Systolic actions, isovolumetric contraction, starting to contract, spits it out. Let's see. Let's keep it going. And just like I said before, pressure has to exceed in one chamber over the other to move blood forward, right? And that's why we have certain parts of these. Other assumptions that we can kind of make just based on this diagram, just looking at it, just like taking another like different perspective, is that, hey, I look at the atria and they seem pretty passive to me, right? There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of pressure going on. We have a little bit of contraction period right there, and we have like when it's starting to build up right before the floodgates open, right? So it's like, okay, that's like our in-between chamber, things like that. If I start seeing higher pressures like in the lab or something like that, then I'm thinking, okay, that's probably like a lot of volume going on, right? So a lot of volume happening, extra volume. Let's see, what else?
So the diaphragmatic notch is presented in the pulmonary artery? Is that where you find that at?
Aortic mostly.
It's aortic?
Aortic, well, aortic, because you think aortic pressure, right?
Yeah.
Aortic pressure exceeds, and it depends on what you're measuring to. So like if you're measuring in the AO, then you're going to get like pressure readings from the aortic valve, right?
So, okay, because one of the tests, when I was doing the, one of these tests, it says pulmonary, it's in the pulmonary artery.
It is also too.
It's in both, okay, because I
Yeah,
was gonna ask.
but like let's see, like if we're measuring like AO pressure, right? Let's say this is AO pressure, so we're putting a sensor catheter right here, right? So it's sensing what's happening over here, which means it's sensing this valve closing, right?
So it's in
And then
both,
when we
okay.
do on the other side, we put a catheter up here. Then when we see a diaphragmatic notch, that would be the pulmonary artery
Gotcha,
closing.
okay.
Yeah.
So that makes more sense.
It wasn't, let's see, a couple chambers weren't really represented on here. Like your RV wasn't on here, I don't think. RV pressure, of course, a little bit different, right? It mimics the left ventricular pressure a lot, just a lot smaller, right? A lot less pressure.
So to clarify what he was just talking about, both AO and pulmonary artery can be, aorta and the pulmonary artery can have a diaphragmatic notch,
Can.
depending on where it is inside.
Well, it depends on where your sensors are measuring, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it
Depending where
depends.
you
Yeah.
start. Okay.
Yeah. So if you have your catheter up here, you're measuring.
Because we're really
Either way.
just talking about the notch being in the closure of those valves.
That's pretty much,
Mhm.
okay, yeah.
Same
Exactly.
valves.
Yep. Well, let's.
Well, I mean,
Assembly
different
valves.
valves, but.
I got you.
I guess depending where you're at, you're gonna,
All right. And let's take a closer look here. I'm gonna go through here real quick. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's this part right
When
here?
you click, yeah.
Semi-lunar valves.
I need to look at that. Yeah, semi-lunar valves.
AV,
I printed them up.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I found this little gem last night. I was like, that's some good points. All right. So I kind of went over the basis, right? Let's take another gander because it's going to take a couple looks before we even get it down. All right. Let's look at one period at a time. So we're talking atrial systole right here. These are the things that are happening in the heart, right? We have this portion over there. What waves do we see that are present here? We see a wave right there. We see how it correlates on the EKG right there. So we have our P wave. And then probably like 0.180 seconds later, we get our A wave right there. Boom. Then we see all the succession like that. During the time, like right here, if we hear during atrial systole, if we hear any noise when we put it like our stethoscope on during this time, it's an abnormal heart sound, right? S4, and usually is like more associated with like higher volume and filling pressure, like more pressures. What's that?
Turbulence.
Like turbulence, yeah, definitely turbulent flow from all the the volume that's kind of like in there. So it's like more volume, so it's gonna echo a little bit harder, a little bit more pressure and stuff like that. So you're gonna get more noise, which is not good. Yep. It's usually is like what is it, like heart failure, things like that. Things are backing up. Cool. All right. So that's what's happening during then. This is now, let's see. Isovolumetric contraction. Pretty much the same thing, right? AV valves close. AV valves, semilunar valves are closed. They should be during isovolumetric. Let's see during this period right here. All right, we see the pressure building up, right? We see this pressure. And then we see this little thing called the C wave, right, on our atria. So it's like, hey, the ventricles are squeezing, moves that blood against that valve, boom, right? The C is that C slap against the valves. That's the best one. C slap.
Closure.
Sure. Closure slap.
Closure,
Yeah.
yeah.
C wave.
Closure, C. Closure.
C wave. Oh, there it is. C wave.
Those are the AV valves.
Close wave. What's that?
It could be either one of the AV valves. Or
Exactly. Exactly. So like if we had a right atrial pressure, we would see it right there, right? Or we would see in our pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. Yep. PCWP pressure, also called PCW pressure, also called wedge pressure. All these things in here. Cool. All right. And since this is already a normal occurrence, this is like where we get our S1, right? They call it the lub dub, right? Lub dub. So that's what that's associated with right there. Lub dub. All right. Next phase. Rapid ejection, right? Rapid ejection. At this point right here, the valves are opened up and the pressure in our LV and our RV has exceeded both of these right here and is now moving blood forward. Boom. Boom, boom. There we go. We see that this portion right here usually happens after the QRS complex, right? And while that's going, there's really no heart sounds associated with it because it's moving blood forward. And it's normal. Let's see. Then we see reduced ejection, like I said before, just reduced ejection, right? Starts slowing down the pressure. The pressures are pushing back on these valves right here, right? So over here we have like our afterload. Remember that? Afterload / SVR / PVR. All these things, right? Remember those acronyms?
Yeah.
Cool. Over here on the pulmonary side, we have, what is it? What would you guys call that right there? Like the pressure being exerted in the pulmonary circuit. What is the resistance that's the resistant pressure that's being exerted over here? in the pulmonary circuit. What is that resistance pressure that's being exerted in the pulmonary circuit? That's a good one. Because on the other side, we talked about, what is it? SVR, PVR, right?
You're talking about the formula?
Afterload. No, I'm just talking about this pressure that's being exerted backwards right here.
Is it-
What's that resistance pressure?
It's not the wedge, is it?
The wedge is the where we're at, right? That's where we collect our pressures. That's where we collect
Is
it.
it 25 over 2?
I'm just talking about the pressure in itself, like the pressure
Oh.
that's being exerted here in your pulmonary artery backwards. Right. What's that? Pulmonary what?
Capillary.
Pulmonary what? Pulmonary something being exerted over here. Pulmonary what?
Diastolic pressure.
What's it? No. Pulmonary what?
PAH, pulmonary arterial hypertension.
That's what happens because of this. Increases. Ooh. What is it? Pulmonary something. What is it? Wait up.
No, I'm just trying to break.
Pulmonary artery?
Oh no.
Oh.
The pressure that's being exerted here in the pulmonary circuit. What is it? What?
Are you looking for an actual number?
No, not number. Term.
First word pulmonary. Yeah, first word.
Yeah, first word's
Arterial
pulmonary.
pressure?
Nope.
It's pulmonary vascular.
What?
Pulmonary vascular resistance.
There it is.
It's the
Yes.
same thing as systemic.
Yes. There it is. Whoop. Yay. Nice.
Everyone was just
Swish.
like, even have it broke down.
Pow. There it is. Pulmonary vascular resistance. Pow.
I think it was
That was wrong,
sorry.
Love it. Yay. Get me back motivated. All right. Pulmonary vascular resistance. Right. Viva la resistance. La resistance. Yes. There we go. Resistance. All right. So we have resistance, right? So that's things. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably not. Yeah, it'll be on there, right? So we have things. Remember, I said the pressure. The LVs have to overcome pressure, right, to move forward. Or anything has to overcome pressure to move forward, right? So like over here, this like for the RA, to move forward over here has to exceed, RV has to move blood forward this way, right? But there's always constant pressure that we have to fight against. There's always pressure that we have to fight against. It's almost like life too. We're always fighting against something, right? It's like life, right? There's always some kind of resistance we're getting, right? Trying to go to work, nope, traffic, right? Slow you down, right? More pressure over here, pushing you that way, right?
So RA has to fight against, or no, PVC has to, PVS, whatever.
PVR?
Fight against RA. What do you?
I'm saying like the pulmonary vascular resistance mean, hey, pulmonary circuit and the vascular things right there are putting pressure over here, right? All the time when we're breathing in, breathing out, we're getting that pressure pushing back, right? So like the right heart has to overcome that pressure pretty much, right? All of the right heart. So it's like in order for pressure to move forward, it has to exceed the chamber in front of it, right? So it's like, we have pressure always exerting backwards, so we have to fight, right? Now, if there's too much pressure being exerted, right, things start to back up. We need more volume probably to overcome that pressure, right? Because pressure equals volume. So you get more volume to push it, or these muscles have to be like, harder. Push harder, right? Push it. Give it everything you got, right? Which the heart can. The heart, corresponds to it, but not forever, right? You can't keep it up forever.
Not very well yet.
Yeah, can't keep this. Yeah, exactly. You can push yourself for a period of time, but then it's going to get tired of it, and then it's going to start, putting out, right? So you get like in this where it's like pulmonary hypertension, right? Pulmonary hypertension would be like high pressures from over here exerting backwards, right? So now it has to fight upstream to that. Same with like on this side. So we have like our SVR, right? Systemic vascular resistance / afterload / peripheral vascular resistance, right? Pushing back this way. Or I'm sorry, I'm like, no. Pushing back this way. Yeah, pushing back that way, right? So that's what keeps everything. All your arteries over here pushing backwards, right? Now, if you had like stenosis in your main arteries, right, like in your aortic or things like that, that might affect it, right? You might have like crazy high pressures coming out. Hypertension, you might have like peripheral artery disease or something like that, decreasing, making a lot more pressure pushing back this way, right? It has to overcome a lot more pressure, things like that. So that's all it's doing, right? LV is just trying to overcome everything, make it move forward. And, when there's more pressure pushing forward backwards like this, the heart responds appropriately, right? It increases its preload, right? Increases its preload and just loads a bigger bullet, right? And then pow, pushes it out, higher pressure, gets it going. Or the muscles say, hey, we got to squeeze harder, let's push it out, pow, right? Things like that, increased contractility, go. Things like that. Cool. All right.
It's all about squeezing stuff, it looks like.
That's basically, isn't it? Isn't that life? Isn't it? To squeeze. We're just trying to get pressure to the next place, right? We're just trying to get to the next level. We're just trying to move forward. Right? Stop with all the pressure pushing back on us. We're just trying to go. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-mm. So then we have like the beginning of diastole. Back again, isovolumetric relaxation. So after everything's moved forward, we have everything pushing back, right? And then it pushes back so much that it closes these valves right here, right? And then it pushes all the way up. So as all these valves are closed, we still have blood coming into the atria, right? Trying to push it out, right? So that's right before our V wave right there where all that blood collects, right? We see all our pressures like our aortic pressure. We see, boom, right, the valve shut. And then we have our diacrotic notch, right? What other thing is happening like right here during this phase right here, right at the beginning? What else is happening? Mm-hmm. What else is happening at the beginning of diastole or in diastole in general? What's happening right here? The valves have closed. Because the pressure's pushing back. So it's pushing all the blood back here. Boom. Ooh, snap. There it is. Coronary arteries are being perfused, right? We have our coronary arteries coming off these cusps. Fills in, right? The pressure over here is filling up those coronary arteries. That's what's perfusing your coronary arteries, right? Yeah.
It's diastole that what supplies the blood,
Mhm.
relaxation.
Cool, right? So we're like, hey, we should probably, if we want to know how the coronary arteries are flowing, we should probably collect data during that period, right? When it's filling. Ooh, right? Interesting. Interesting. That is interesting. All right, I'm gonna take that for later. I got something to use with that. Okay. Anyways, we see where it kind of corresponds right there. And that's your dub, right? That's your dub step. Your lub, dub, dub. Lub, something. I don't remember. What is it? Oh, I was doing the Rick and Morty thing, but what is it? But I got caught up. Yeah, there it is. See? Yeah, I'll be all right. I'll get through it. Just need to get through my coffee and I'll be all right. Thanks. Yeah, so do I. Yeah, it's a good show. Anyways,
Not for kids.
yeah.
Not for kids.
So we have our lub and then our dub, right? Lub dub. Open lub, close dub. Open lub, close dub. Damn, okay. I don't know, I'm trying to make something happen, it didn't work. We'll see.
Do we need to take a break?
I don't know, maybe. We'll see. We're gonna continue. All right, next phase. Boom, we open up those ventricles, we get that rapid ventricular filling. I think we're about back to day one, right? Step one almost. Rapid ventricular filling happening during this time. Valve open ups, right before it opens up, you get your V wave, right? Coming in, so we get all that thing. Now, you'll hear S3 right there if there's a lot of like blood right here, right? So if you have like a high preload, right? high, which also could be like high in diastolic pressure, right? Or in diastolic volume if you have high pressure right here in diastolic. Or you'll have a lot of volume here, you'll hear the S3 when it empties out because it's like blood like bouncing back, right? So it's like if you have a lot of blood right here, blood empties out, it goes boom, and then it kind of radiates, right? So it creates that sound like that drop. Bloop. Okay.
There is a fourth sound, but you really can't hear it from that.
The
What is the
fourth
fourth?
sound.
They said that there's a fourth sound, but you don't hear it. So
Exactly.
What is the fourth sound? Then?
Well, let's see. Let's see what happened during this period. Hold on. So like we have our S4 right here. So that kind of correlates with our atrial wave,
Okay.
right? So S4, so it's like if there was like a lot of volume up here in the ventricle, that S wave, or I mean that A wave, the squeezing of the atria is going to be like, push that blood and it's going to go bloop, right? Make that big old bloop sound or gadunk, gadunk. Yeah, gadunk. Oh, God. All right. Gadunk sound, right? So you almost hear that gadunk. Atrial gadunk. There it is.
I like it.
Atrial gadunk.
I like
There it is. Boom. All right. That's what you get S4. All right. That's kind of like it. I want you guys to go ahead and explore that too as well. Let's see. You can reset stuff.
That's under the cardiac cycle video? Or no, that's.
Interactive Wiggers link.
Wiggers.
Yeah. And then we also have the Heart Sound website.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Let's see if we can hear the gadunks.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's hear. Uh-oh. Hold up.
I think he's dead.
I brought it back.
Yeah, he got him.
Clear.
Gadunks.
There's like 3 of them.
So you have Lub Dub and then that other one. Very subtle. Yeah. See, this is what normal sounds like.
Solid. Like, that's it.
This is story. What is it? Like, what is it? Law and Order, like beginning.
Oh, yeah.
The criminal justice system. These are their stories. Dum, dum. So yeah. So let's see. Compared to that.
You make a beat of it.
Good dunk. Good dunk. Good dunk. Good dunk.
Is this three?
That is, what's that?
Remix.
Yeah. Yeah. Doom to doom. Dum to dum. To dump dum. To dump dum. To dump dum. To dump dump. All right. You can do a lot with that. I'm gonna come back to that later too. That looks like
Is there
fun.
an example of like a heart, like after someone's drank like a ton of like Red Bull?
Let's see. Hold on.
To see if that's there or not.
Hold on. Nope.
No?
I'm looking for like a high. What
No
is
SVT?
it? Yeah, I was looking for like an SVT, and I'm like, no, maybe not. But
Like
Yeah.
Red Bull plus.
so let's hear like certain things. All right, let's move these like. Oh, where is it? I like doing side by side stuff. Where is? Oh, thanks. I heard that. All right. Where is that? Where are the heart sounds? There we go.
Drag it, click it, drag it till the mouse touches the side and it'll open up halfway down.
Ah,
You know, what you call it.
it's all good. I got this. Ow. All right. Here we go. Let's take a look. Let's look. So you can kind of deduce some stuff, right? So like, let's look at aortic stenosis, right? So we have aortic stenosis right here. What do you guys think is going to do to these pressures and stuff right there, first off? Aortic stenosis. What's that?
Create more pressure.
Where would it create more pressure? Would it create more pressure here, or would it create more pressure here?
PA.
In the, well,
I mean, excuse me,
I would
AO.
say
in the AO?
Yeah.
Back up against the.
So,
coronary artery lobe.
well, let's see.
more the left
Aortic
side.
stenosis, okay? Let's look at it here. Let's just look at it like a puzzle real quick. So, we have aortic, yeah, riddle me this, right? Ocho riddle. All right. Pop quiz hot shot. All right. Here we go. So we have like our aortic valve right here. So when it comes to stenosis, that means it's not opening all the way, right? So it's got like a closure to it, right? So let's say, so where would higher pressure be? Would it be here in the left ventricle or here in the
I would
aorta?
think in the ventricle.
Left ventricle.
The ventricle?
Yeah.
The ventricle, left ventricle?
If it's not close.
Well, no, I mean, because what it has to do is, it's a very small spot to get into, right? So now, all this blood is kind of competing to get in there. So you have a lot more pressure here, trying to scoot all that blood forward, right? And we have a lot more pressure pushing back here because of that small area, the valve area. So you're gonna have,
More blood sitting there, right?
what's that?
You have more blood sitting there?
Oh, that's like kind of like the side effect to it, right? Yeah, so you have like, if this keeps going like that, sure. Like we can get enough pressure that would, move it forward. We're like, yay, it moves forward, right? And then, what is it? But like, in order to move that thing forward, what had to happen was your muscles right here had to, put out more pressure to make it move forward, right? So that's going to take its toll over time, right? In the beginning, just like if you're bodybuilding, right, you're going to get bulk, you're going to get big, you're going to get swole, right? You're going to have muscles, right? We call it hypertrophy, yeah. Heart swole, right? Hypertrophy, heart swole. Right. Ooh.
It's working overtime.
Sounds like.
It's pumping overtime, it's building up. Yeah, it's like doing the Rocky song, right? But it only lasts till the Rocky song. It's like doing the montage. Wound up, back on my feet, right?
Pretty
And
cool,
then-
sir. I like it. You're pretty
It
cool. I
is.
like it.
Yeah.
I'm not recording. I can't be recording still. I hope not.
You are.
Oh, no. All right. Well, never mind. Embarrassing.
I forgot about it. Don't delete
Or
that.
did I?
We're
No.
gonna go home and watch a video.
But so we have higher pressure, right? Because it has to overcome that and move all that blood forward. So the muscle builds up, right, until it can't anymore. Then it slowly starts to dilate and die, right? So it's like, well, first off, it gets buff, right? And then it's slow. Then once it, keeps going over a period of time, especially like if you're doing like 60 beats a minute over a period of minutes a day, right? So just think about that. That's a lot, right? Put a lot of strain on your heart. It could take a lot, but it has its breaking point, just like with each and every one of us, right? And then it starts getting bigger and dilating, right? Boom, until it gets to the point of no return, right? Dilated cardiomyopathy. Well, let's hear what happens. Let's hear like early, like so that's just the start, right? It's like remember, you can kind of hear it right on. It's like choo 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 choo. Skidoo-doo. Hear that whoosh?
You can hear that one big time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I'll try this together.
Yeah.
Let's all sing.
Because it's like, yeah, yeah, there we go. Heart sounds, yeah, yeah. For homework, make your own heart sounds, right? Make the heart sounds with your mouth. Yeah. There we go. Skidoo. All right. So yeah, so we have that, right? Aortic stenosis, we have a late. What it's doing is like it's trying to get through, right? You hear that turbulent flow, like that shh, shh, right? That's turbulent flow. What's cool is that it also, like when you're doing echocardiograms or you have a stethoscope up there, you're gonna hear that, right? Echocardiograms, when we use ultrasound to like look deep into this right here, and we can actually put like a pulse wave and just kind of put a line right here through there and just hear the sounds that it's making, right? And what we turn those sounds in is to velocities, right? Which goes up, which equals pressure, but that's different. So like we capture the velocity, coming out of here, and we hear that turbulent flow, that shh, right? It's pretty cool. Uh-oh, is that Mr. Rivera?
Yeah.
I can hear it, I can feel it. I don't know.
That's the custodian. Head
Oh,
custodian.
gotcha. Bob. Cool. All right. So just, vice versa. Let's see. Let's say this valve right here is aortic insufficiency or aortic regurgitation, meaning that this valve is incompetent. It's not doing its job, right? And that blood flow, instead of stopping over here, comes back into the left ventricle, right? Bad things that can happen is that, hey, you feel a volume right here, too much volume, right? It's going to keep getting bigger, and then you're going to take on more, right? So you're going to have more preload, right? More increased and diastolic pressure and diastolic volume, all that stuff. Let's hear it.
You can't even hear the heartbeat.
That's all blood regurgitation back.
It's back.
Which one is that one?
Aortic insufficiency, meaning that it
Valve's
flows.
not.
The valve's not closing here all the way, so when it shuts, it's moving backwards. So it's like boom, and then the blood shoots out right there. Crazy.
Damn, you can really hear that one.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Don't confuse that with what you sound like when
All right.
And then, just pretty much, let's hear this, ventricular septal defect. You hear that swoosh, right? But you heard that swoosh like in the aortic stenosis too. Well, let's see if we hear swoosh.
But it's the later swoosh. This one's an earlier swoosh.
But it's a swoosh.
It's
We know
swoosh.
it's swooshy swoosh, right? Swooshed up. That's all we hear, right? We hear the swoosh. There's not supposed to be swoosh. Not in love dub. Now that makes sense, right? Couldn't say that
No
statement at the
swoosh in
beginning of
love
class. There's no swooshing in love dub. Yeah. There you go.
There's no swooshing in love.
There's no swooshing in love dub. Wow.
That's a shirt.
There it is. Yeah.
Right there.
Hashtag it. Whatever. Yeah. But whatever it is, like you hear the swoosh, and usually when you hear swooshes like that, they're blood moving through like small holes, right? Let's see, like with that, let's see if we hear it like in, where is, atrial septal defect. So this one right here was a VSD, which is a hole in the ventricle right here. Let's see what it sounds like when there's a hole in the atria, right, between the two.
So there's a hole in
Anymore.
the atrium. Not,
Anymore.
Hole in the atria.
Ooh.
Yeah. Versus that atrial septum. You can hear that like a constant swoosh in the background, right?
Right.
Because the atrial's always filling.
oh yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, that's.
Shh, shh, going back and forth.
Nice ocean noise.
Yeah, cool. I don't know, just things like that. You can't make a diagnosis based on a heart sound, but you can. If
Start
it,
your exploration.
exactly, right? I mean, it's like a duck. It looks like a duck, but when you go up there, it's like a platypus, right? You're like, oh, this is. Why am I in Australia for this example, right?
I think about the
So
nature,
it looks like a duck, but why is this a platypus,
Like
right?
four animals put together.
Exactly. Same with EKG, right? You need all the pieces of the puzzle to tell the story, right? You just can't have one and be like, it's that, right? You need a definitive diagnosis, right? To call something something. You need to put have proof, right? And that's what we're trying to do is find proofs. We're not all the time are we going to be able to say it's definitely that, right? It's definitely that. Like now,
Cumulative effect of.
you got to Sherlock Holmes it and deduce it, right? Deduce
Oh, I love
everything.
that movie.
I love that show. That was a good show.
I haven't seen the show. It's good.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbottom is amazing. What is his name? Crumble
That's the
Patch
one that
or
plays
something.
on-
I don't know. Stumble Mocks, whatever. Benedict something.
Talking about the actor.
Yeah, that guy.
Benedict
Cumberbatch?
Oh, Cumberbatch. There it is. I thought it was like Stumber Slot or something. It's weird.
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Anyways. All right.
Is he the one that plays Doctor Strange?
Yes, that's
Okay,
Doctor Strange.
okay.
There it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And then let's look at different things like this, right? So let's take a look at this. We learned a little bit about the heart cycle, right? We learned a little bit just all around. Let's see what happens. We talked about aortic stenosis, right? So if we're going to look at the aortic valve, what two pressures do you think we need to look at the aortic valve? What two pressures will we need?
We're talking about the wedge?
What we're going to look at the aortic valve right here. Which two pressures do we need to look at the aortic valve? Ventricle and AO? I like that. Let's take a look. All right. So let's get rid of all this other crud. So we have our ventricle and our AO, right?
We're five. Number one.
There we go.
You got a new
Nice.
car.
So this is kind of our pressures together, right? So when does that valve open?
Where the red and the blue meet.
During systole, right? So systole, we know that this is systole right here, and then this is systole right here in the ventricle, right? So, yeah, maybe like over here, right? Kind of tells that story, right? If we're trying to move that
That's
blood
pressure,
forward,
right? Or is that?
this pressure,
That's
That's the pressure, right?
this is, yeah, this is pressure waves. So this is the left ventricle pressure, this is the aortic pressure, right? So once the LV pressure overcomes the aortic pressure,
It opens up.
right, the valve opens up and it ejects, right?
And it closes.
And then it closes, boom, you have your diaphragm notch, things fall back in, right? Cool.
That's normal.
Yep. So this is normal, right? So pretty much very close to each other, right? You just need a little bit of pressure to open up that aortic valve, boom, right? Well, let's see what happens when we block it. Let's see. Give him bad disease.
Oh, nice.
There it is. Look at that. Terrible disease.
Oh.
Look at that, right? You see the difference right here, right? In systole, right? So it's taking more pressure to open
Yeah.
up the aortic valve.
We can't really do it
Yeah,
very well.
exactly. So it takes this much pressure to open up the aortic
Wow.
valve, right? Boom. Crazy, right? Versus that pressure. So we're looking at the aortic valve. We're like, oh, let's put those two together, right? Let's look at the LV and the AO. Let's see what's in between, right? And let's see what happens. Skadoosh. Boom. Stenosis, right?
What
Cool.
about that LV stiffness left?
Oh, let's not even worry about that yet. Let's take baby steps.
Hey.
We'll get there.
Oh, no, no.
We also talked about regurgitation, right? We talked about aortic regurgitation, right? Aortic regurgitation. When does regurgitation usually happen in the,
Stenosis in the heart.
well, I mean, regurgitation.
Like a diastolic system, you
Sorry. Like, let's see, like in the valve right here, like we're looking at the aortic valve. We want to look and
Valve.
see if it's, yeah, valve, if there's any regurgitation, right? So during what phase of the heart are we looking at to see if, yeah, if there's
Beginning of that?
diastole? You said diastole, so like we're over here, beginning of diastole, so like right around the isovolumetric contraction, so kind of in the same area. Okay, what else? Let's see, from like right there to like right there before, you know, the ventricle starts pumping again, right? Moving forward. So let's see.
You said, what was the last question you said? I'm sorry, I kind of lost track there.
I just want to see like okay, so like we're looking at the aortic valve and we want to see like if there's insufficiency regurgitation coming from the blood over here to the left ventricle. And
we
what
see,
during what timing would we like look at it? It would be
So-
during diastole is what we kind of came up with, right? Because that's when the blood's moving backwards, right? So diastole, systole is happening, boom, and then everything kind of sits back into diastole, things close, right? So, and then the ventricle starts filling from over here. So what happens is efficiency, and when it closes, instead of like, you know, the blood stopping, it keeps going,
So that's
right?
aortic
That's regurgitation. So, and if we want to look for regurgitation, especially like here in the valve right here, we want to look during diastole.
No, yeah, after the diaphragm notch.
It would be, well, yeah, exactly. But then the diaphragm notch would totally be affected too, right? So like you would
Oh, you
you get
won't
like,
see it?
you might not
Okay.
see it, right? Or, you know, what other things? What other things?
So you said
Or
forward
it would look,
regurgitation?
different.
Aortic
Oh, I thought you
regurgitation?
said did you say forward regurgitation as well?
No.
Oh,
I hope not. I hope,
Okay, what is that?
we can go back and rewind, but I hope not. That would be
Circulation.
my bad.
Oh, okay.
That would be my
I
bad.
don't know. Maybe I'm just making stuff up. I do that sometimes.
Me too. It's cool. Wait, I shouldn't say that. All right. Cool. So we have that and the insufficiency. Boom. So we said maybe no diaphragm notch.
Yeah, dude, I can hear you from out there.
What else? Okay, let's see. Aortic regurgitation. Boom. Oh, snap. It almost looks like an LV almost, right? Look at that. Look at that.
Um,
So it just stays open.
Wow.
So that was an aortic regurgitation.
Yeah, so if this doesn't close, right?
There's really not enough pressure. You need to open it.
Well, because like we have the pressure, right? We already have peripheral vascular resistance and everything pushing back, right? Closing that valve, right? So we have pressure closing, and then boom, that valve doesn't work, right? It's pushing blood backwards, right? So this valve isn't stopping anything, right? So it's not doing its job. It's not stopping anything, right? It's not stopping.
So it would be a lot lower than.
So it would be like if we just cross this out, right? The more regurgitation, the more and more looks like the ventricle, right? It's like we cross that out, and it's pretty much just an extension of the ventricle, right? If we didn't have anything stopping the blood from coming backwards, right? The stop, right? We have the stop, then it would look more like
Stagnant blood, it's just holding back up.
where it would look like. Look at that. Yeah.
Whew, okay.
You see, I mean, it kind of closes like down there, right? Or, kind of has, usually you'll have your closure like right here at the dichroic notch, right? And then it'll slowly taper off, right? Instead of the closure, it just is like, nope, I'm emptying. Scoop, bloop, bloop. I'm still going down, right?
For so long though, right?
Yeah.
Like minutes long?
But yeah, I mean, we look at it like right there. Let's see. And then right there. Oh, man.
Wow.
So let's look and see kind of the difference. The things yay.
Whoa.
What the
I
hell
like
just happened
that.
there?
No,
That's like a.
this is it's prime time. That's what it is. But we look at this. See, we look over here. And
So
look at this
close
right here.
and
So
then
this, we said this and this, right? Is usually when we're looking at that valve,
Uh-huh.
and then we see how kind of how it gradually just kind of like gradually slows down, right? But it doesn't empty all its contents, right? So it's like, oh, it still has like pressure pushing back. Right? It has the valve kind of keeping it up, right?
So it closes and then doesn't close and it closes. And,
So this one is like bad, right? This one is good.
yeah.
How do we see between the two? Like, which one's bad, good, right? Now, let's say we didn't have our LV I guess it's paused. Now, if we didn't have our LV pressure to kind of correlate these, we were just in the AO, what are some of the things that we look at, just to look at it, that's different from this to this over here?
The pressure variation.
Where at? What would we call that? We have to put a word on it. No. You're talking about this to this pressure right there?
Yeah.
This to this.
More wide versus.
Oh, man, you were like almost there. What is it? You put wide and pressure. So there's one more word that you need. Like, what kind of pressure?
Let's see if I can-
Arterial pressure. Well, they call it pulse pressure. Wide pulse pressure.
Wide pulse.
Wide pulse pressure. So you have systole and then diastole right here, right? So look at the number of those, the difference in between those two, right? So that's like, oh, that's what we kind of think. Wide pulse pressure for aortic regurgitation. Interesting, right? This is a little bit better, right? This is normal pulse
A lot
pressure.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot
I'll
better.
go with that. Right, pulse pressure. Interesting. All right. Yay. Okay, resume. All right, let's see. Let's look at something else. Let's see. What name a valve that we want to look at? Which valve do we want to look at?
Pulmonary.
Mitral valve, pulmonary valve. We haven't done pulmonary. Let's go look at pulmonary. Let's see. Or on the right side of the heart, I mean. So pulmonary valve, which two pressures do we need for the pulmonary valve? Let's see. Looking at the pulmonary valve. Looking at the pulmonary valve right here. Right ventricle and your pulmonary. So you say pressure right here and pressure right here, right? Let's collect it. Deep, 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 deep.
Nice.
All right. Now, we see it looks a lot kind of like your left ventricle, right? Left ventricle and your aortic pressure when we both kind of line them up, but it's a lot smaller,
Smaller.
right? Kind of looks the same. So let's see if the same stuff still happens, right? So let's give this person pulmonary stenosis, right? Yeah, let's give them pulmonary stenosis. What do you think is going to increase?
The pressure in the right.
So
right.
the green is your right ventricle, the yellow is your pulmonary.
The green.
So
I'm
let's
still
see
trying to
which
figure out how it
pressure.
works there.
So which pressure would be higher if there was pulmonary stenosis? Right ventricle, right ventricle. All right, that's your hypothesis. Let's see if it happens. Deep, deep. Let's see. Oh no,
That's
there we
right.
go. Ah, there it is. Bow. Yeah, so there you go.
More pressure to open up the pulmonary.
And we see it happening during systole, and we see the difference, especially right here. Most of the time, they're pretty close together, right?
Okay.
And then now we see this big gradient right here. Cool. Same thing. And then we give it regurg. Be kind of like the same on the other side. Look at that. However, it's the same.
It didn't even
Right?
hold nothing, they just went, whoop.
I know.
Wow.
Exactly.
They didn't even hold it, they just fell right back into the ventricle.
Crazy, right? It's just like, because you have nothing stopping it. You have nothing stopping it from moving backwards.
It's like an extension of the right ventricle, like you said.
Yeah,
what?
exactly. It's right ventricle arm.
Right ventricle arm.
Sure.
Why not?
All right, so cool. All right, last one. Let's look at the mitral valve lastly. Okay, so mitral valve is a little bit different. When is the mitral valve, let's see, let's go look at the mitral valve here. When is the mitral valve usually open or active a lot of times?
That,
Diastole, okay, right, it opens during diastole, cool, right, when the pressure up here exceeds this pressure over here, okay. Now, since it's more active in diastole and we can kind of see the valve function in diastole right here, let's see, which two pressures are we going to need to observe this one right here? Mitral valve. Which two pressures are we going to need?
Left ventricle, left ventricle.
Left atrium, left ventricle. And if we don't have the left atrium, then we use what?
Pulmonary.
Pulmonary wedge pressure, PCW. PC dub. Yee. Rubber dub dub, whatever that was. I'll get it one of these days. All right. So, yep. So we have that. Let's make this happen. RV. No. Let's go LV and PCW. Okay. Let's look at that. So, when did we say that? So, right here. So let's look for stenosis first off, right? Which areas are we going to look for stenosis? So when in your mitral valve, right over here, you see how it opens right there, right? In stenosis, it doesn't open very much. It only opens a little bit, right? So there's a smaller hole. So where are we going to look for? Where are we going to look for stenosis at? We have, well, I mean, like which phase during the heart are we going to look for stenosis? Are we going to look for it in systole here or in diastole here? Diastole, right? Because that's going to tell us how it opens up, right? If it opens up during diastole, right?
So that's systele's top.
Cool. All right. So we're very interested in this part right here, right? So this part.
That's the pressure.
So this is during diastole, right? So what's it happening like usually about like right here when the valve closes, then you have the isovolumetric relaxation, and then boom, the valve kind of opens up like down here, right? When this pressure right here exceeds this pressure right here, that mitral opens up, right? Starts dumping that blood in there. Cool. All right. So if it was stenosed, what would you guys see? If that mitral valve was stenosed, what would we see?
The pressure, the higher.
Higher PCWP pressure, and where will we see it at? In systole or diastole? Yeah. During which phase of the heart will we see the mitral stenosis most? Diastole. All right. Well, let's see. Let's keep a look on our diastole right here and see what happens. And skadoosh. It's kind of subtle, but you see it increased, right? Yeah, that increased. So let's see if we can take a snapshot. Boom. Kind of. But we see it's supposed to be a lot bigger pressure gradient right here, right? I don't know if it's really doing it justice.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, there it goes. Yeah.
Your aorta tracing changes too.
Yeah. Oh, this is, yeah, different. Let's see. It's kind of hard to see, but I think there is a little bit more grade. There's a bigger gradient like right here versus like right here. But in the lab, it's going to be a lot more profound right there. You're going to have a lot bigger difference right here. All right. So any questions about that? Interesting. Good. Good. Lots of fun, y'all. All right. So if there are no further questions,
For any races.
yeah, this message will self-destruct. Yeah. But then we
You
also have a
accept.
quiz this week. So go ahead and finish up your quiz. And any other questions about what's going on this week? Anything we need to cover? Some you guys can, refer back to later. All right. Then with that, I think I'm going to stop.
With the case studies, I was just wondering,
Oh, case studies.
When it comes to the responses,
Mm-hmm.
and then you say we don't need citations necessarily, but I was wondering if we're allowed to just bring in some references just in case.
Yeah. It'll help your case during your discussion. Say, hey, from this side, I pulled this, and this, kind of thing, right? Say, oh yeah, this is where I found it out on this part, right?
Yeah.
So that's helpful for a lot of folks too. What's that?
I had multiple ideas, but then I was like, well, maybe if I brought this in, maybe it'll help me out with my.
That's the formula, actually. It's like, hey, you start formulating ideas about how things are happening, right? And you're like, hey, I need credibility for these ideas, right? So let me go look and see where this stuff is at. Like, I think, hey, like this is a different gradient during myelostenosis, right? You're like, oh, let me go find some evidence. And then you start looking in the different places for evidence.
But I figured like when it comes to like the diagnosis, like I've seen like when I actually go into like doctor's offices and stuff, but like when they're coming up with it, they also have like other opinions coming in. So I was like,
Mhm.
maybe, doing that,
Yeah.
bringing citations is like the other, like consulting.
Yeah,
other
that's exactly
doctors.
that's how it is. Honestly, that's like you consulting with other people, right? You are consulting the written word of other people. So that's good.
I need 5 minutes.
All right.
Can I talk to you real quick?
All right. If there's no other questions, y'all, that's it. I'll stop recording.